We are going to be looking at some disturbing videos, strange and odd news stories, and as always, let's go ahead and get right into today's video. So I was actually not planning on making a video today. I'm actually making a video for Seconds of Horror because I like the mystery, the creepy, the paranormal, things like that. But when I saw this news story, I said to myself, I have to talk about this. Now, what is it that I wanted to talk about so badly? Well, if you're not aware, parts of Europe, mainly Portugal, Spain, and parts of France, they had received a major power outage. Tens of millions of people were without power. I actually made a video a couple months ago where I said it seems like every 2 to 3 months we are seeing major power outages impact certain parts of the world. Matter of fact, the whole CrowdStrike situation was also included in that timeline. CrowdStrike, very ominous name, where computers with Windows all crashed, impacting businesses, banks, pharmacies, markets, and so forth. CrowdStrike being created and owned by the World Economic Forum. But we shouldn't be concerned about the World Economic Forum anymore, given the fact that the older guy had stepped down, and now we have this new guy in charge. So again, there's no more concern there, right? Right. Now, of course I'm being sarcastic, but back to this power outage. What caused this major power outage that impacted all these people? Again, tens of millions. Well, reading this article from the Times, which was published today, they go on to say that the Portuguese grid operator said a rare atmospheric phenomenon in Spain had caused the massive outages across the peninsula. I just wonder if it's that pesky atmospheric gloom again. Remember the atmospheric gloom where news and media told us it had casted a shadow over the United Kingdom, blocking out sunlight for days, if not months. Yet come to find out it was actually scientists taking balloons, spraying things in the skies in a system called Satan. But anyway, I don't think they would ever lie to us again, so I'm just going to go ahead and continue reading this article. It goes on to say that a massive power blackout hit Spain and Portugal at midday on Monday, affecting tens of millions of people and bringing most of the two countries to a halt. The cuts paralyzed transport infrastructures, railway stations, airports, businesses, and buildings. Hospitals were forced to switch to backup generators. Telecommunication networks also crashed, causing disruption to major mobile phone services. Again, the article goes on to mention how a Portuguese grid operator said a rare atmospheric phenomenon took out the power in all these countries, but I'm reading through this article, they never explained what that atmospheric phenomenon was or how it caused this grid to go down. They're very vague about this atmospheric phenomenon. They just go on to say it's rare, and it has to be very rare given the fact how often do we hear of an atmospheric phenomenon taking down the grid in multiple countries in Europe. Maybe later in the day they'll go into more details about this atmospheric phenomenon. I am making this video early in the morning. I just find it odd that they come out and say that, but they really don't go into any details. Matter of fact, right away, officials went into full deny and debunk mode. Like, reading this article here from New York Times, which was published not too long after this had happened, they go on to say that officials did not say what caused the outage, which affected tens of millions of people across the peninsula, but several denied any foul play. They go on to quote Antonio Costa, the president of the European Council, who wrote on Twitter, "At this point, there are no indications of any cyber attack." Portuguese energy authorities said the outage occurred following a disruption in the European grid, but did not provide any details. Now, after a report that an unspecified atmospheric phenomenon had caused the outage, REN, a Portuguese electricity and gas supplier, vigorously denied that was the reason. Yeah, something's going on here, and something inside my gut tells me it's not the weather or atmospheric phenomenon. This has caused a lot of chaos in Spain and Portugal, not so much France. France was barely impacted, and they were up and running, I think, a few moments later, but yeah, they are even telling people not to drive in Spain because all the traffic lights are currently out. And again, multiple news agencies are saying that so far they are still looking whether or not there was any cyber attacks, but as of right now, they are still expressing the fact that there are none. Because it's not an attack if it's happening from within and they're fully aware. Again, think of something like CrowdStrike. I don't know. I'm just not buying the excuse that it was a rare atmospheric phenomenon. I just can't help but feel that, and given my previous video, I just can't help but feel that we are in a test run, a test phase of the big one, the major power outage that will impact the entire world, where they just bring the entire grid down. They are also constantly showing us a great blackout in repetition in movies and TV shows. The Simpsons talking about when they had to go through a great blackout and had to write down everything by hand. We have Leave the World Behind. Then we had that other Netflix series with Robert De Niro that had to do with bringing the grid down, cyber attacks, and so forth. Even if they don't bring the grid down, even if there's no great power outage, it's always best to be stocked up for any emergency, for anything to arise, whether it's waters, non-perishable goods, things like that. Doing my homework, trying to do research, I'm going to other news websites talking about this atmospheric phenomenon, like this one here from skynews.com. They go on to say that the cause of the outage is unclear. Again, Portugal's grid operator blamed a rare atmospheric phenomenon that caused anomalous oscillations in high voltage power lines in Spain. Yet, Spain's grid operator has yet to respond to that or provide an update on the causes. Now, Portugal is over here trying to explain what happened over in Spain, and Spain is over here like, where did they get this information from? Because I would love to know. But continue to read this article. It goes on to say that, again, Spain's grid operator has yet to respond to that, but it's unlikely whatever caused the outage was a single localized event. A major power line going down can cause a large outage, as it did in 2021 when an interconnector between France and Spain failed, leaving 1 million people without power for a few hours in 2021, but it's unlikely to cause a system-wide failure of the kind we are seeing now. Matter of fact, they are saying this is one of the biggest power outages to impact Europe. While I was searching the other power outages that happen, like I said, they happen in a span of every 2 to 3 months. I was searching Puerto Rico's power outage that happened around the beginning of 2025. I don't remember the news really covering this story that happened a couple weeks ago, where in Puerto Rico, there was a massive power outage that left millions again in darkness. This article goes on to say, and I'm reading from ABC News, which was published on April 16th, Puerto Rico plunged into darkness again as island-wide blackout hits. The article goes on to say Puerto Rico suffers major power outage for a second time in 4 months. And again, I don't remember the news and media talking about this. Millions of people were without power for about 3 to 4 days. And I don't believe they even state what caused this power outage again in Puerto Rico. The entire island was without power, impacting the main international airport, hospitals, and hotels filled with Eastern vacationers. And around that midday Wednesday, 1.4 million customers were without electricity and more than 400,000 were without water. This is so crazy. This is so crazy to me. And going back to Europe, I just cannot believe they are blaming the weather, a rare weather phenomenon, which they do not expand upon. This story, this news story, has so many red flags. Like I said, I'm going through multiple news agencies, multiple websites talking about this rare weather phenomenon, and nobody's giving any details, nobody's explaining. And again, Spain, they're not even confirming whether it was a rare weather phenomenon or not. It seems like they may be trying to gather up a story. But again, at the end of the day, I just feel like they are in a testing phase. Whether it's a testing phase for a massive EMP, somehow to bring the grid down or what, this just seems like one giant test for something much bigger later on. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this channel and you want to see more, please subscribe. If you're already subscribed, please like, as any engagement does help the channel grow. Once again, thank you so much for your support.